And so during this workshop, the chat room is open. And so if you have any questions or any thoughts, like feel free to use the chat room. This will be recorded. And so I'm going to not use any names just for confidentiality purposes and just to be mindful also of what you share during this session. I suggest that if you all had a pen or paper to just take notes or, even in your phone on your computer, because there might be some thoughts that come to mind while we're talking and you might not remember it later on. So it's a really good tool for you all to use to reflect later on after the session is completed. And so, yeah, bring those pens out and just feel free to take all the notes. And so again, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them during the presentation if it's relevant to what I'm addressing. If not, we'll save the questions for the end of the session, and then I will answer those questions towards the end. Okay. So who am I? Oh, sorry, I shared the chat and I can't exit it. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. I'll help you moderate the chat tonight.
Okay. Can you all see the chat room on my page?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I can all share it. I can share it. So I can see it. So I thought you can all see it at the same time.
Nope.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so my name is Senait Litchmore. I'm a registered psychotherapist and Enneagram coach. So I have 10 years of experience providing clinical support to individuals, youth, and their families. And so my area of specialty is personal, professional development, life transitions, reparenting, and relationships. And so along with my clinical experience, I also have 3 kids, and I've taken the time in between working to raise those kids. And it's been a really important part of my professional and personal journey because I'm a really big advocate on applying the knowledge that you know. And so what's the use of knowing all this stuff if you can't apply it to your day-to-day life? And so, centering or prioritizing my family is a way for me to kind of apply that knowledge. And so just wanted to share that. And so today's agenda, we will talk about deepening a relationship with yourself. And so I really believe that the most important relationship that we'll ever have is with ourselves. And so that's why I think it's important for us to kind of explore that today. Next, we're going to explore the armor you carry. And so when I use the term armor, I'm going to explain it a bit later when we get into that section, but I'm really referring to the defense mechanisms you might use, or maybe even your personality that was birthed from a place of needing to be loved, belonging, or safe, and exploring how sometimes we might overfunction and use certain things when we don't need to do that any longer. And so it sounds a little bit convoluted right now, but once we get into that, I hope that you'll be able to understand the concept. And so the last part we'll touch upon is strengthening a relationship with others. And so although the most important relationship we'll ever have is with ourselves, we all have an innate desire to be in relationship with other people, to be loved, to be seen, to belong. And that's why I felt like it was important for us to explore that today. So we're going to begin by exploring thriving a relationship with yourself. So thriving a relationship with yourself, I believe, starts with self-awareness. And so self-awareness really helps to nurture an authentic and meaning relationship with ourselves. But it doesn't just happen by just like haphazardly. You can't just say, you know what, I'm going to get to know myself. So what do I like? What are my hobbies? Like those things are great, but it really requires us to take that time, take that space to really observe ourselves and get to know ourselves on a deeper level. And so when we don't have depth in our relationship with ourselves, what happens is that we crave it from other people, and sometimes in an unhealthy way. And so we might crave like validation, affirmations, just external validation to crave that relationship that we're able to fulfill within ourselves. Also, like increasing our self-awareness is also essential part of emotional intelligence. And so, we talk about this often where, knowing how you feel and knowing, what you like and all that. But it's not only about knowing how you feel, but also learning how to manage your emotions and manage yourself. And then also learning how to understand other people's emotions. And this all is stemmed from like self-awareness. And so what getting on that journey also helps us to tune into how other people see us. Sometimes people say things like, I don't care how people see me, that's their opinion. Yes, that's their opinion, but it actually is significant in getting to know ourselves. It's like, if that's how people are seeing me and that's not who I think I am, what does that mean? Why is there that disconnect? And so self-awareness also helps you recognize your strengths and challenges and what motivates you. Like what motivates me? What motivated me to come to this workshop? What motivated me to get up in the morning? So understanding yourself helps you understand that and set goals and live a life that's really meaningful to yourself.
Hey, Senait, just to let you know, we're still on slide number 2, the who am I? It hasn't been changing for us.
Oh, thank you for
Yeah,
letting me know.
no problems. I know sometimes it does that.
Is this Chanel or okay?
Kim.
Okay, give me a second, Kim. Thank you for telling me that. I'm here. Okay, share screen. Okay, what do you all see? What do you see now, Kim?
So now we're seeing our sense of self creates our reality, and it's changing properly now.
Okay, great. So this was the agenda that I thought that all of you saw. And so here we are on this quote. So our sense of self creates our reality. And so that means, the stories we tell ourselves, the way we interpret situations it's all a really important part of who we are. And so the question is, who are you? And so I know I want you to sit with that for a little bit as I, continue to speak. Like, who are you? What are your strengths? What are your blind spots? What are your vulnerabilities? When you're stressed, what are some things that you do to soothe yourself? Who are the people that you contact to help soothe yourself? Sometimes when we ask ourselves these questions, some of us might have automatic responses. Meanwhile, some of us might take some time to sit with it. And I think there's not like a right way, but I want you to kind of sit with these questions or even jot them down. And this is going to help you kind of get to know yourself. And so also, like, where do you carry your stress? Let's say you had a hard day. Do you carry your stress in your throat? Do you carry your stress in your chest? And are you aware of that? If you are, do you do anything to move past that? How do you make decisions? Do you make decisions off impulse? Are you a planner? Do you take your time? Do you like to incorporate people in the process of decision making? All these things are important. And so once the workshop ends, I think it's really important to take some time to kind of observe yourself, even if it's for a day or a week, observing yourself and not with any shame. So if you notice that you're experiencing right now, like shame or judgment, like, wow, like I'm really impulsive with decision making. I wish I was more of a planner. This is not the space to do that. As you observe yourself, it's about accepting yourself and having that openness of like, oh, I didn't realize I was like that. Oh, that's interesting that I make decisions in that way. And this is actually going to help you enhance your relationship with yourself, and have a healthy inner dialogue as opposed to like a more judgmental one. So who are you? I'm going to share my screen again. So what I want you to do right now, I want us to kind of engage in this little activity on your own. And so what I want you, so I want to touch on these questions because when it comes to who we all have like the best version of ourselves, and we all have a version that maybe we are not our best selves. And so when we're our best self, we're on top of the world, we're energetic, we're optimistic, we're satisfied. And it's like we know where we're going, we know who we are. But when we're not our best self, like the world can feel exhausting. It can feel overwhelming. You might feel insecure, unworthy. And so what I want to do is like take some time to kind of explore these two versions. And so the first one would be like describing yourself. What are you like when you are at your best? How do you feel when you're living out your best self? And if you want to take it a step further, where in your body do you feel your best self? Then how often are you here with your best self? Are you here on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? Are you here a few times a month? How often are you there? And then I also want you to take some time to do that with your not so best self. How do you feel when you're not your best self? How do you feel when you're living out this not so best self? And how often are you here? So many of us, if not most of us, we function between the two. Some days we're our best self, some days we're not. But sometimes we're unaware of why we are fluctuating between the two, or we're not sure, like, how did I get here? Like, why did I wake up today and I'm not my best self? And so when we move from this place of like functioning on autopilot to living a more conscious life and being more aware of who we are, we're able to like understand when we are fluctuating between the two. you know Maybe, for example, I know that when it's cloudy outside, I'm a little vulnerable and I might not be my best self today because of the weather. Yeah, and like today. And so I love that you guys are commenting in the chat, because when we're listening to these presentations, it's easy to just listen and be like, yeah, that sounds good. But when we really think about these questions and turn inward and reflect and answer them, that's really when we're able to remember the content and it's able to live on beyond workshops.
If you'd like, Senait, I can share some of what's being said in the chat.
Yes, I would love that.
Okay, great. So, well, I shared at my best, I feel ease. Then we have someone who shared that at their best, no, actually, someone said, these questions are letting me know I need more balance. When I'm not my best self, I feel it in my shoulders. Someone also shared, I also hold my stress and tension there. And we have someone else who just shared, at my best, I'm at peace and no anxiety.
Wow, that's powerful. It's powerful. So I'm gonna move to the next slide with that, the beautiful sharing and the beautiful reflections that many of you shared with us. And I want to introduce to you this acronym, which is a great tool that might help you like really practice these on your own. So it's COLE, stands for curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love. And so the goal is not for us to live our best life and be our best self 24/7. It's not possible, nor do I think it's healthy. We are emotional beings with a full range of emotions that serve a purpose and that are like signals or signposts to tell us something's going on. I feel anxious because of something. I feel sad because of something. I'm content because of something. And so the goal is really about understanding and increasing our awareness to be like, what's happening here? Why does my body feel this way? And so this is a great tool because at first, when we start with curiosity, we can start by asking ourselves those questions like, how do I feel? Where do I feel it? When did this start? Where is it coming from? So curiosity is important that it happens with openness as opposed to, I'm always sad. Why are you always so anxious? That is not practicing openness. That's practicing assumptions and projection and yeah, kind of like this is how you always are. You're always this type. That's not open. And so when we're curious and open to the fullness and the range of how we might be feeling, then we can move into acceptance. And accepting is not saying, oh, I'm accepting that I'm sad means I'm always going to be sad. No, it's accepting that you're sad in that moment. In this moment, I feel sad. In this moment, I feel overwhelmed. And then meeting that with love. And so love is the opposite of rejection and shame. And so we're going to treat it with tenderness, compassion, like, wow, you're sad because you lost a lot in the last 2 years with the pandemic. And when you spent time today with your friends, that sadness, that moment reminded you of the sadness and the grief that you lost. And it was a hard 2 years. And that's it. And so when we practice curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love, this strengthens a relationship with ourselves. Because when we do the opposite and we are rejecting how we feel and we're, projecting shame and judgment, what we are practicing is self-abandonment, self-neglect, self-regard, self-rejection. And most of us would not be in a relationship with someone that's rejecting how we feel, who's judging how we feel, who's, projecting shame, yet many of us do it to ourselves. And so when I say like this, the most important relationship that you'll have is with yourself is going to be more important if you are practicing these tools, and it's going to be really harmful when you're not. And when you're not, you're going to crave the validation, the acceptance from externally. And when you don't get it, it could be really detrimental on your internal world and who you are. Sorry, that's really loud. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Okay, so we're going to get into the next slide, which is what are your strengths? And so I know it's easy for us to kind of talk about, what we're not good at and what are things that we want to work on and all of our problem behaviors, but we all have some beautiful strengths. And I think it's important for us to explore that. And so I'm going to, there's a typology, there's a system that I use called the Enneagram. It's kind of like a personality system. And so I'm going to use some of the tools within that to kind of deepen our understanding of who we are. And so I'm going to begin by kind of exploring our strengths. And so with this slide, there's 9 different words that kind of signify the 9 different types in this Enneagram system that I use. And so I'm going to go through each one, and I want you to kind of jot down one of the strengths that that resonates with you. You're like, you know what, this is me. This is definitely my strength. You might resonate with more than one, probably 2 or 3. And so whatever those are, just jot them down. So we're going to start with vigilance. And so vigilance as a strength can look like if you're the type of person that, you have like a healthy skepticism, like you're not that trusting. And so what you do is you're good at preparing for all different scenarios. So if you were to go on vacation, you're the person with the lists, you're the person with the plan, you know where we're going, what we're doing, and like you're really aware of your external environment. And this is in hopes to, keep yourself safe, keep the people safe around you. And so that is your strength. The other strength is goodness. And so this can be a strength as if someone has really high standards, they're really great at like attention to detail, pride themselves on sticking to their values and their beliefs, and really being good based on their own standards of what that looks like. Can also look like perfectionism. People might call you perfectionist. That goodness is probably your strength. The next one is optimism. It's pretty straightforward. So this is usually a strength when you're like, you believe, you probably believe a happy life is a good life, and you naturally look at the bright side of things. You try to create possibilities, and so that you have a good life, and you don't see obstacles. Even when other people see obstacles, you see possibilities, and you kind of keep it moving, looking at the bright side. The next one is helpfulness. Looks like an N, but it's an H, helpfulness. And so this is for that person that enjoys being helpful. They really identify with being a helpful person, generous, kind. They probably have a lot of friends because they're good at being in tune with other people's needs. The next one is adaptability. This person might, pride themselves on being able to fit into different scenarios, not rocking the boat too much, like kind of being agreeable and allowing themselves to kind of blend into various situations and with different people. And strength. This is one that we see often, especially with Black women, where, we pride ourselves on being strong, like nothing can break us. That person that has like a strong exterior, and if there's an obstacle, they feel like they can overcome that. And this person's probably very resilient if you see your strength as the strength. And so success, this one is more, and maybe success is not the best word, but this is someone that kind of prides themselves on being good at something. They are successful based on the definition of those people that are important to them. So let's say someone that's really good at being a mom, and their definition of being a mom is a certain way, and they're able to meet that, and they pride themselves on that. They pride themselves on being really good at their job, really good at a hobby, and it's really a part of their identity. Their role in their lives is really part of their identity, and they do it really well. And then exceptionality, which is also like uniqueness. This person, maybe you're really unique, and you love that about yourself. You love that you're different. You love that you see the world from a unique perspective, and you embrace that. And then knowledge. Knowledge would be if you're that person that really strives to get all the information possible, particularly with like topics that are interesting to you or that you love. And you might have like a hunger for more. Like, I need as much information as possible before making this decision. And again, like, this is something you pride yourself on, of like gaining that knowledge. And so I stopped sharing the screen because I wanted to ask all of you, was there a strength there or a word there that like really resonated with you, where you're like, what, like that is definitely my strength. That's a word that I didn't realize applied to me, but as you explained it, I was like, that really resonated with me. If anyone wants to share, or in the chat. Okay, so I see vigilance. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to continue because maybe people are still kind of thinking about it. Yeah, okay. And so what we're gonna, okay, nice. I'm seeing people sharing their feedback. Yeah. And so sometimes what happens with some of our strengths is sometimes we can overuse our strengths. And so within this system that the Enneagram tool, it's like we sometimes can use our strengths as armor. And so what that looks like is, let's say when you were a child and you did good in school, and every time you did well in school, your parents praised you, and they're like, what, Sasha, you are so good at math, and you are awesome, and I'm so proud of you. And so every time you bring home those math assignments, you're getting all the praise and all the accolades and all the attention. And so sometimes what happens is that children or people, we start to own that identity. Oh, I'm someone that's good at math. I'm someone that's strong academically. And then it becomes embedded in our personality or who we are. but sometimes it might overfunction, and we might use these strengths as armor, where it's like, I am loved when I am successful. I am loved when I'm good at math. I'm loved when I'm academically strong. And so sometimes these characteristics, we might overuse them and it might work against us. And so in thinking of your strengths, I want you to also think of, am I overusing some of these strengths? So for example, vigilance, I saw that as like a common theme. Sometimes for vigilance, we could feel like there's a danger threat, and the threat might not exist. And so what happens is we might be spending a lot of time preparing for worst case scenarios, but we might take time away from really connecting to our inner voice, saying, hey, like, I actually am safe. I feel like I'm not, but when I really think of it, I have the tools to prepare for worst case scenario, or to prepare for the worst. And I don't need to overthink, or I don't need to be anxious about this because it might be out of my control. And so I want you to all kind of sit with that and think of, am I over functioning in my strength? You know, am I over functioning in being helpful? And so helpful is another tool, another really common one for women, where we might use that to people please. And we might be helpful because it's like, when I'm helpful, I'm loved. When I'm helpful, I have friends. When I'm helpful, my life is meaningful. Not realizing that people love you even when you're not helpful. People love you even when you're not constantly meeting their needs, and that your needs matter, and the needs of other people don't trump yours. And so that's just something that I want you to all think about, and just to reflect following the presentation. So we touched on this. When are you using your strength as armor? And so if you were able to identify, and I know a lot of people were able to identify one or two, I want you to now ask yourself, like, when I am vigilant, when I am kind of like trying to figure out, am I safe? Do I have enough? Am I good enough? Am I helping my friends? I want you to ask yourself, like, how does it feel in your body? And where do you feel it? And then to practice that compassion, I want you to kind of, practice self-compassion. And so if you identified with vigilance, you can practice self-compassion by telling yourself, I am safe. I am stable. If you identify with adaptability, you can tell yourself, my presence matters. My feelings matter. And I'm worthy of being centered in conversations. If you identify with success, you can tell yourself, like, I am loved for who I am, not just what I do, or not just when I'm successful, or not just when I'm doing something well. If you identify with knowledge, I want you to tell yourself, my needs are not a problem. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to know everything, and I'm still enough. And then goodness, tell yourself, like, it's okay to make mistakes. I'm still loved when I make mistakes. And then helpfulness, my needs matter too. Then strength, I can be vulnerable. My vulnerability is a strength. That one's a good one, actually. And I think that one can apply for a lot of us, telling ourselves that, my vulnerability can be a strength, and it can be a superpower. And then exceptionality, you can tell yourself, I'm not too much. I'm not too intense. I'm not too different. Yeah. as I'm saying these things, I'm holding my heart. And so I hope that, if you said one of those things, I hope that you did that while holding your heart. Yeah, just to connect with yourself on a physical level as well. And so oftentimes, like, we shame ourselves and others for simply being human. And we need to recognize that shaming doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help me to grow. I'm sure it doesn't help you to grow. And so recognizing that, I think, is really important. And so when we shame others or ourselves, we actually keep ourselves stuck in this cycle where it's like, I'm too much. People won't like me because I'm too emotional. So I'm just going to tone it down. And then when you do accidentally become too much, you're like, see, this is why people don't like me. And you get stuck in this cycle versus I am enough and I'm not too much. And people will love me for who I am. And I love myself for who I am. When we do that, we experience like transformation or even freedom. But the freedom, before freedom can happen in relationships where we show up fully as ourselves, freedom has to first begin with a relationship with ourselves. So if I don't feel free to express my intense emotions with myself, it's going to be almost impossible, or even if it is possible, it's going to be very vulnerable. And if you don't get that validation and the affirmation that you need in those vulnerable moments from other people, it's going to be a challenge. And then wrapping it up with practicing gratitude. Like, thank you, body, for protecting me, for telling me to plan before I go on this trip. Thank you, body, for giving me this resilience and this strength that I sometimes need. Like, I'm really thankful. And so, like, it's so beautiful how our body works, how even when our body is over functioning in a certain way, it's just doing that to protect ourselves, not because it's broken, not because it's confused, but because the body thinks you're not safe. And so the body's over functioning sometimes. And so telling ourselves, giving ourselves those affirmations and and kindness and gratitude helps soothe the body and convince the body, like, whoa, I am safe. I am okay. And I can be free in who I am and in my personality and in my strengths and even in my not so great parts, because I am loved. It's funny, even though I know this stuff, I've even getting a little emotional saying it out loud, because it's really powerful stuff. And, I know we always talk about self-love is the best love, but there's so much depth to that. And there's so much growth that we all can do when it comes to strengthening that relationship with ourselves. And so before we transition to the next part of the presentation, I really hope that, you take some of these things and you take some of these terms, even if it's just one affirmation that stuck with you, and to practice that on your own. Okay. So now we're going to go to thriving in relationships with others. And so I kind of said earlier that, although the greatest relationship we'll ever have is with ourselves, we all have an innate desire to be in relationships. Like, we are relational beings. We're designed to be connected to others. And this is also a form of like a survival instinct to be connected to others. It's not just on this basic level, but survival on an emotional, mental, and physical level. Like, we all want to be loved. We all want to be seen and known. And so thriving in relationships and being in relationships is not necessarily an option, but it's a need. It's an inherent need. And so that's why this topic is so important to me. So we're going to begin by going all the way back to our childhood, because our first relationship influences relationships we have in the future. And that first relationship is the one with your caregiver. So the relationships with our caregiver helps us to form how we function in the future. And this is not just like a straight cut, conversation where our parents are like, okay, listen, this is how you have friends. When you have a relationship, you share and you give and you take, and it's a mutual, like this is not a direct teaching, but more indirect. We learn about how we function in relationships by observing how our parents function in relationships with us. Like, are my needs centered in this relationship with my parents? If not, when I get my own relationships, my friends, romantic relationships, I'm probably not going to center my needs because I learned in this first relationship that my needs should not be centered and are not centered. And so if our parents then, or caregivers send us this message that, your needs are valid, your voice is important, we are going to function like that in relationships. We're not going to be afraid to express our needs and not going to be afraid to inconvenience other people for our own needs, because our first relationship kind of set the foundation for that. And so with that being said, this theory is really in attachment theory, which I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that. And so I wanted to touch on it because I think it's kind of important for us to understand. I did provide a link that will be shared at the end of this workshop that will kind of help you understand what is my attachment style, right? We all have different attachment styles. And I personally don't believe that we're all one style. I'm going to kind of explain it here in this slide, but we can be one style but we can change. And so let's say, right now you have the anxious style, eventually you can have a more secure style. Or sometimes, even though it's birthed from your relationship with your caregiver, relationships can form your attachment style changing a little bit, especially a broken relationship or a relationship that caused harm can cause you to change it to a more challenging attachment style, or a safe relationship can cause you to have a more secure style over time. And so if you were to do this quiz, don't feel like your style is like stuck forever, because it's not. There's always room for growth. So the first style that we're going to touch on is secure. And so if you have a secure style, you're comfortable with expressing your emotions openly, usually. You can depend on your partner and let your partner rely on them. And so these relationships are based on honesty, tolerance, and emotional closeness. And sorry, just to interject, usually attachment style is referring to romantic relationships, but I believe that it also can be applicable in your platonic relationships as well. So the anxious style, this style, usually they have this thought that kind of like, I can't live without this person. Like, I need this person. And so there's a level of anxiety that exists with this style. People sometimes have like a negative self-image of themselves while having a positive view of other people. Then there's the avoidant type. So this type is like more strong, independent, self-sufficient on a more on the emotional level. So kind of like, I don't need anybody, I'm fine. If I had a relationship, great. If not, it's not a big deal. Usually this style is not as in touch with their own emotions. And they connect with people more on like a task-based level and don't mind not touching. They're usually not really touchy people in relationships, a little bit more detached or like standoffish. Meanwhile, the anxious type is a little bit more, they could be more clingy and needy and a little bit more oversensitive. Then the last one, the disorganized style, this one's more like a mixture between anxious and avoidant. And so as a result, their behaviors can be a bit more ambiguous and unstable. And so the partner in this relationship sometimes is a source of desire and fear. So it's like, I want to be in a relationship, but I'm not sure. I want to be with this person, but I don't know. And so this is a style that that is also one that, it's important to grow towards secure. So the goal really is about having a secure attachment. And, like I said earlier, I believe all the three types, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized, can eventually become secure, especially in secure relationships. And so the reason why I touched on this is because relationships when we were young, they're where we got hurt. But relationships in adulthood are a place where we can heal. And so healing happens in relationships, whether it's with yourself, your friends, your family, your colleagues, your therapist, your book club. But when we have false ideas of like how we need to function in relationships, sometimes the relationships are not genuine, they're not authentic. But when we really get to know who we are and we have that strong relationship with ourselves, then we're able to be more trusting and more daring to show up in relationships more authentically and as our full self, where we have that freedom. But when it comes to relationships, there's always relational risks. And so relational risks, I love this term relational risks because we don't talk enough about how risky relationships can be, especially when they start. You know, when you put yourself out there, you make a new friend, and you know that beginning stage, you're like, I don't know how much she likes me, or I don't know how much they like me, but you still put yourself out there. It's a scary but beautiful place, because this is again where the healing happens. And because we're hardwired for love and connection, taking relational risks are scary, but usually it's worth it. And so I'm going to explain a little bit of what that looks like to take relational risks. And so I want to start by and be actually before I'm going to go back a little bit. When it comes to relational risks, when I say relational risk, I mean things like even applying to a job is kind of a relational risk, because you might get rejected. You might not get called back. You might not get called in for an interview. There's a bit of a risk that's taken there. Let's say you're online dating and you make the first step and you reach out to someone. That's a risk. Another risk that maybe many of us might be uncomfortable doing is like inconveniencing a friend. If you really need your friend to take care of your child, or you need them to pick up something for you because you're sick, asking them, putting them out of their way is risky, but it's something many of us do, kind of have to do. A bigger relational risk would be maybe having an uncomfortable conversation, telling a friend about your boundaries, that you didn't appreciate the way they spoke to you in a public place, and that you don't want to be spoken to as like that. That is a bigger relational risk, because there's a risk there that your friends might have conflict with you, might be like, hey, that's not true, I didn't say that, wasn't a big deal. And then you enter this ground where it's like, is this relationship going to last, this minor conflict? And so when we take risks in relationships, we actually risk strengthening the relationships and making them stronger, creating stronger and more lasting bonds that could enrich our lives in the long term. But in the short term, we risk conflict, we risk possible breaking up, we risk rejection, and most of all, we risk uncomfortable emotions, which is interesting because many of us don't want to, admit it, but like, or maybe we don't realize it. Sorry, I went through the slide. Many of us don't realize it, but it's like, we don't like those feelings that come with rejection. We don't like those feelings that come with us liking this person on through a dating app and then they ghost us. We don't like that feeling. And so we do anything we can to just avoid that. And what happens sometimes, it becomes crippling and we miss out on deepening relationships and getting to know new people. And so now I want to talk about, let's dig a little deeper. Okay, so when it comes to relationships, it's important to identify what you need. And so expectations. And so these expectations can exist in friendships, in romantic relationships, even at work. So what happens sometimes when we are rejected and we lose a friend? Let's say we lose a friend and we miss that friend. We're like, I miss that person. I miss her. I wish we were friends again. What do I do? Because I can't stop thinking about her and I can't stop thinking about the friendship that we had. Now, although you miss this person, it's important that we learn how to identify the need. So, what was the need that that person gave you that you don't have right now? And it's a really helpful shift to have, because it helps us understand that yes, I missed a friend, but I also missed what they gave me. And so I want you to all think of it right now. Just think of a breakup, a friendship breakup, a romantic breakup that you had, and you really missed that person once that breakup or friendship ended. Can you think about what was that need that that person gave you that you really appreciated? And it can be something like they were funny, they were good listeners, they always helped me, they always met my needs. And I want you to kind of sit with that for a little bit, because I think it's a helpful shift where we're moving from missing the person to missing that thing that they gave you. And so once we do that, we're going to go to number 2, where we're shifting from need to desire. And so sometimes when we have this need and we're not aware, right, we want to do anything to fill this need. So we're like, okay, I really miss all the dates that I went on going out for dinners. So let me hop right back on to online dating, and I'm just going to go out for dinner with anyone that's there. And because I need this, I need this. That is dangerous, because what can happen is that you can move into unsafe relationships and you're not necessarily healing that relational wound, but you're just fixated on temporarily filling that need. But when we move it to desire, it becomes more intentional. Like, I desire to have companionship. I desire laughter. I desire, someone to meet my needs. This is a desire of mine. And I'm going to do what I can to fulfill that desire. It doesn't come from a space of lack anymore, but more of a want. And then that thinking of it from that perspective might help you to be more thoughtful when trying to fulfill that missing need that that person might have left. And so then I want to go to relational maintenance and relational healing. This is such a great concept that I saw in a book that I had to include it, and I use it all the time with clients, where we have relational maintenance friends, and we have friends that are healing friends, and spaces and relationships that we can heal in. And so maintenance friends are those, you call every once in a while, they know what you're doing, day-to-day friends, you kind of do life together. They're great friends. We all need maintenance friends. But then there's relationships that are healing. And these are the spaces that help us heal from the wounds from past relationships. And so this can happen with relationships with your friends, but also with your therapists, with your book club, or even with groups like this, like the Villij. These are spaces where I could be vulnerable with this person because this person makes me feel safe. This person sees me in this relationship. I can show up. And so when you find and are able to identify relationships where you can heal from relational wounds, it prevents you from trying to heal relational wounds with your maintenance friends or with your new relationships who don't know you, who you haven't established safety with, and that foundation is really not there. So when you end up looking towards those people for healing, more pain could happen because they haven't proven themselves to be safe. And so this is also a great thing to kind of ponder on, a great concept to kind of think of your relationships right now. Like, where are my relationships, and who are they? The ones that I can heal with and that I feel safe with and I could be vulnerable with, and I can talk about my breakup or the pain that I had by not getting this promotion at work and how upset I am at my boss. Like, who are these spaces that I could heal my relational wounds with? And who are my relational maintenance friends who I can't go to for for this purpose. Another important part of relational risks is clarifying which risks are not worth taking. Okay. You are smart. You know yourself. And sometimes your body knows yourself. And so if you know some risks are not worth taking, whether it's physically, in your gut, in your mind, in your heart, I want you to learn how to kind of tune into that, because relationships that are healthy always have choice. Like love is a choice. There's no coercion in love or in relationships. And so sometimes we might feel like we are kind of stuck in this relationship. Like I don't want to really be friends with her, but I feel like there's no way out. This is not a healthy risk. And so identifying what risks are not worth taking is really important. And then this is one that we all know, is identify if the relationship is worth the time and the energy that you put in. Is there increased love and connection when I'm with this person? Do I feel like they are filling my cup? Maybe not all the time, but do I feel like there is an exchange there? The thing about friendships and romantic relationships is that these are relationships where we have choices. We can choose who to be in a relationship with. Therefore, I strongly believe that they should be life-giving. And so although there are risks involved in exploring relationships, there still needs to be a healthy exchange that happens. And so when that healthy exchange happens, it actually strengthens you to take more risks in the future. It's like, wow, that risk paid off. I can take more risks and I can strengthen my relationships and my friendships and live a life that's more joyful and, more full. And so knowledge is only rumor until it lives in the bone. I love this quote. And so I want to ask you all, what are some ways that you can take relational risks this week? And it could be something small, like asking someone to help you with something, or it can be a bit bigger, like asking someone online to go on a date, but how you apply it really depends on your capacity. What is your capacity for possible rejection? What's your capacity for possible no? And how can you sit with that if you do take that risk and you're not met with openness? Do you have the skills to cope? And yeah, just something to think about. So these are some journal prompts. These are actually my favorite journal prompts. I personally use them all the time. They're simple, but I find that sometimes the most simplest questions or interventions can have the most long-term impacts. And so I would really encourage you all to kind of try to incorporate this into your day, into your week. And this can be where you write it down or even like something that you just say out loud by yourself. So just starting with, how are you feeling? There are many emotional wheels online that can help you expand your vocabulary when it comes to your emotions. So just identifying how you feel. And then where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your jaw? Do you feel it in your head? And then breathing through that. Then what do you need right now? And this would be like a need that you can meet in the moment. Maybe you need a drink of water. Maybe you need to stretch. Maybe you need to go outside. But what is a need that you can meet in the moment? Maybe you need a nap. And then the last one, how can you be connected today? And so this can be connected with yourself, and this could be connection with other people. Do you want to call a friend today? Or do you want to practice some yoga or some stretching exercises to connect to your body? when we practice these type of tools, we are able to, it helps us connect with ourselves. It helps us connect to our present moment, which can help us kind of increase our self-awareness, but also decrease the emotions that might be coming from the past or the future. And it also rewires us, because many times, as women, as Black women, we've got these messages where, our needs might not matter. We have to do these things, or we have a long list of things we need to do for others, or a lot of tasks. And so we constantly send this message that our needs don't matter, and that the needs of other people might be more important than our needs. And so when you ask yourself, what do I need right now? And you're able to meet that need in the moment, you're rewiring that lie. And instead of that lie where it says your needs don't matter, the needs of other people's are more important than yours, so you have to do this thing. When you meet your need, you're actually telling that lie, no, my needs matter. And so when I drink a glass of water and I'm thirsty, I'm telling my body, your need of being thirsty matters. And it doesn't stay there. That message then could translate into different parts of my life that might be more impactful. But it starts with the small things. It starts with the small practices, because it's not about making the big changes right away, but rather, how can I build these small habits to rewire some of the ways that I see myself, to rewire some of the ways that I might be shaming myself or judging myself and having this harsh inner critic that I live with every day. How can I combat that with something that's more compassionate and loving? And so then showing up for yourself will then help you show up for other people in a way that's authentic. It's also compassionate and loving, because at the end of the day, we all know we can't give what we don't have. So although you might be loving and kind to other people, when you do it to yourself first, and you show up for yourself, you can do that for other people in a very authentic and meaningful way. And so the last slide, just wanted to share some book recommendations, actually. So these are books that I refer to in my presentation, but also books that I love. And so The Power of Vulnerability, Find Boundaries, Find Peace, also by a Black woman. The Enneagram for Black Liberation. So if you want to know more about the Enneagram, you can always send me an email. But this is also a really, really great book. It's actually one of the best books I've read on the Enneagram. And she's obviously a Black woman. And then Beyond Boundaries. This is a Christian book, just for disclosure, but it's really good in terms of helping people move beyond setting those healthy boundaries, but moving towards enhancing the relationships that you do have now that you've learned the tools on how to create relationships that are safe and there's a healthy exchange. And then Attached. So this is a really great book. It's about attachment theory, particularly romantic relationships, and how you identify your attachment style and identify your partners, and kind of figure out how those two different styles work together and how to better enhance your relationships within your particular style. And so does anyone have any questions? That's all for me for today. But I would love to chat. Yes, fine. You guys, okay, in your book club, yes, that book is amazing. Yes, that book is amazing. Find Boundaries, Find Peace. And even the scripts that Nedra adds in her book is so helpful. I find that even if you buy the book and you don't read the whole thing and you read particular chapters that apply to how you set boundaries, whether you have high boundaries or really low boundaries, it's really useful. And at the end of the day, boundaries also helps you thrive in your relationships and helps you show up in a way that, is in line with your values and who you are as a person.
Absolutely, Senait. Well, we definitely love this conversation and the bits of information that you shared with us today. So, on behalf of the village, definitely want to thank you for being here with us in Inner Village. Um, for everyone that's here tonight, of course, this is being recorded, so will be available in the app this week. Senait has also provided us with additional quizzes and more information on the attachment style, so we'll be sharing that as well. So as always, we thank you all for being here with us and spending your Village Sunday with us. Senait, once again, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. We will also share your Instagram link, as that's where, people can always follow you. If ever you have any questions, if you want to know more about her client services as well, please reach out to Senait. And we wish you all a restful and week full of ease. And once again, everyone, this is your village and you deserve to be well. So have a wonderful evening.